The Clancy album is the story of Tyler's career, and it's vitally important that it came before Breach, with Breach following so closely behind it. The more I listen to Clancy, the more I'm convinced that Tyler was very intentional about the track order. Now, before we get into this, I need to say this, I need to make this abundantly clear. There is more than one way to interpret something. Okay? As I go through these tracks, I need you to remember that more than one thing can be true at the same time. So, yes, some of these songs and lyrics are directly related to the greater Dima storyline and to the lore, but that doesn't mean that they can't mean something else at the exact same time. Okay? So, please do not come into my comments like, actually, that line is Clancy talking to Torchbearer about what Nico said during the live stream when Sakavir sees that, like, no, okay? Just just don't. Okay? I know it can mean lots of things. I know there are things tied to the lore. I know that there's lots of interpretations, and I know that there's very obvious interpretations when it comes to the lore. But lyrics can mean more than one thing, okay? Lyrics can be Dima lore, like the exact same line can be a Dima reference and autobiographical to Tyler's life and have spiritual symbolism all at the same time. Okay, like lots of things can be going on even in the same line. Okay, so can we please accept that for a minute? Okay. All right. So, yes, we're gonna be talking about lines that do have other, greater lore interpretations, but we're gonna take it from a different angle today, okay? Let's get into it. Let's get into it. All right. When we take a look at the order of the tracks on Clancy, we can see the trajectory of Tyler's career come through. All right. While there's lyrics present in the songs that are specific to the current time when Tyler wrote them, the underlying theme of each song lays out in perfect order to tell this story. Okay, so let's get started. Track one, Overcompensate. While Clickies knew Clancy from his letters on the Dima Lore website, the opening track of the album officially introduces Clancy to the audience. Pay attention to the lyrics of this verse. Let's break down these lines. If you can't see, I am Clancy, prodigal son done running. Okay, this is a reference to the biblical parable of the prodigal son, who rebelliously leaves his father and his birthright and inheritance behind to go out into the world. After making worldly choices and falling into sin, eventually hitting rock bottom, having to dine with pigs, he returns home again, where he is joyfully welcomed back with open arms by his loving father, who is thrilled to have his son home again, that he calls for the fatted calf to be prepared for a grand feast and a celebration. This parable is typically interpreted as the way that God views us as his children, that no matter how far we may stray from his presence or our birthright as his children, that he'll always welcome us home with open arms, with love, with forgiveness once we're done running from him. Okay, now let's look at this line. Come up with Josh Dunn, wanted dead or alive. I believe this to be a reference to the rise of the band's popularity. Come Up With Josh Dunn is the growth of the band since Josh joining it, with the phrase wanted dead or alive being used to describe the intensity of the demand on their music and their shows once they hit stardom, particularly in regards to how intense the schedules can be for performers, where it can be really physically grueling and unhealthy at times what is expected from artists once they're in these contracts and growing huge fan bases. Okay, now we've got, and now you pick who you serve, you bow to the masses, get kicked to the curb for passing the classes. Okay, this is also a biblical reference, okay, pointing to Matthew 6:24 that says, no man can serve two masters, you cannot serve God and mammon. Mammon meaning like money or material wealth. So here he's saying you have to pick who you serve, and in this case, he bowed to the masses instead of God. But a consequence comes from that. Get kicked to the curb for passing the classes, meaning that even though he passed the classes and was incredibly successful in his craft, there were times that he experienced negative backlash from the very masses that he bowed to. Also, if you've seen my Ode to Sleep analysis video, you know that this man cannot serve two masters concept is not the first time that Tyler references this. Half empty, half full, save half for your taxes, then overtake your former self. Okay, half empty, half full. It's all in how you look at it. There are pros and cons of success and to bowing to the masses. One being that your bank account is much bigger and you're earning enough to need to pay half of it towards taxes, and another being that you lose who you used to be. Your true self can get lost in all of that if you aren't careful. It can be a very dangerous endeavor to go down this road, which brings us to the chorus. I fly by the dangerous bend symbol. Don't hesitate to maybe overcompensate. And then by the time I catch in my peripheral, don't hesitate to maybe overcompensate. So if you're driving too fast and fly by the warning sign of upcoming danger, once you realize the danger is coming, once you catch the threat in your peripheral vision, it's common to have a knee-jerk reaction to overcorrect or overcompensate in order to get back onto the road and in control again. So we're being oriented here in this opening track to Clancy, a character who turned his back on his spiritual rank and title. I lost my rank and title. Yeah, don't worry. I'll get to Breach in the next video. Who signed a deal with his partner Josh, who blew up in success when he bowed to the masses, has now faced the pros and cons of that success and is now done running and is overcompensating to try to return to a corrected course and birthright. So, now that we understand the basic overture of the character, he's ready to tell us the story. Okay, so now we're going to get the story from the beginning. So track 2, next semester. The song itself is basically narrating an encounter in which Clancy or Tyler. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to say Tyler from now on, okay? Because yes, Clancy is the character here, but it's clear that Clancy is an extension and projection of Tyler to a large degree, and this album is telling the overall story of Tyler's career. So I'm just going to say Tyler for the sake of simplicity, okay? So here we go. All right. So we've got Tyler standing in the middle of the road having a panic attack, essentially. But everything about this track points to college. Okay, semesters are what are used in college to break up the school year when you're taking classes. The music video has the boys in this sort of like garage band open mic weekend gig sort of setting that you'd have college kids going to. Even the sound of this song, sonically, lends towards that same local band at college kind of feel to it. We know that Tyler didn't stay in college for long, and based on how he's talked about it at times,
okay, I don't need to hear about my collegiate career.
it seems it wasn't the most positive experience. I'm convinced this song is autobiographical, with this incident or perhaps something similar to it being the breaking point for Tyler, deciding to quit college and go back home to pursue music. Even sonically, you can hear this decision being made, with most of the song being more of a pop punk or garage rock sound, but the end of it transitioning to a soothing, introspective ukulele moment, having us sonically move from the sounds of college life to the sound of him writing his songs on his own, on his uke, in pursuit of his musical aspirations. Track 3, Backslide. So this track is an example of what I mean when I say that there's definitely lyrics here that are speaking directly to the current time in which he wrote them, as well as serving as a thematic driver for the overall story. You've got lyrics in the second verse referring to doing the song Saturday, as well as many others referring to things that are much more current. So I don't want to get into these too much right now because I will be addressing that in my next video. But for now, let's just look at the underlying theme of this song, which is about the struggle of not wanting to backslide, not wanting to feel like you're taking a step back or regressing. We've just had a track about struggling at college and feeling like it isn't the right place for him. And while the decision to leave is to be able to pursue his music career, it had to have felt like a bit of a backslide to drop out and go back home. Track 4, Midwest Indigo. So now that Tyler's left college and gone back home to pursue his music career, we're experiencing the harsh realities of making that kind of dream happen. This song really chronicles traveling to gigs around the state in the frigid Midwest winter while struggling with mental health issues, which couldn't have been an easy experience. This is giving self-titled era vibes, right? During the time that self-titled would have been going on and they would have been going to gigs and likely maybe even before Josh joined the band. Track 5, Routines in the Night. Okay, so here's where I think we've gotten to the creation of Vessel. The lyrics and theme of this song feel like an Ode to Sleep 2.0, with Tyler battling between the day and night, wake and sleep. In the overall track order of this album, this is moving us through his life timeline by pointing us to when he was likely putting tracks together for Vessel, including polishing up Ode to Sleep, and maybe even a bit of reference to Guns for Hands in there too. Yeah, okay. Track 6, Vignette. Now, this is an interesting one. When we take a look at the lyrics, we've got lines about being fresh off a binger in the woods, pointing to songs like Forest and Trees, which would be during that Vessel creation era, and perhaps even like the touring that came with Vessel, where the boys, of course, end every show with trees representing their fans and community. And lines like, hope it held together long enough for he to pitch the greener grasses and hope that she would agree, indicating this could be about his wife Jenna and when they were getting engaged, which would have been in between Vessel and Blurry Face albums. Now, overall, if you pay attention to the lyrics throughout the song, this reads like someone who got a record deal with songs he had already written and was now facing the reality of having to write and create under a contract with a label, because Vessel was created without a label, right? This was something that he created already. But now he's under a contract. Now he's under a label. And now he's having to experience writing and creating while under that contract with a label. So now he's writing under contract with a label who could, at any moment, take control or have too much influence in what he was writing, any of that. Meanwhile, he's met the love of his life and starting a marriage and a family, which comes with a heavy responsibility, particularly financial. And this probably felt like the walls closing in on him, with him wondering if the path he was taking was truly the correct one for both his personal life and for the purity of his music and his message. This message that he felt sort of called to get out there. Track 7, The Craving, Jenna's version. So now Tyler's gotten married. This would have been about March 2015 when they had their wedding, which was a couple months before the release of the Blurry Face album. And married life is far more complicated than anyone really anticipates. So here he's facing the reality of what a marriage relationship really entails and attempting to navigate that while living a fairly unconventional life with this very public career that's about to really take off once we get to Blurry Face. And again, I think the specificity of these lyrics are written from the current perspective of when he wrote it, probably somewhere around 2023. But the basic underlying theme of trying to balance a healthy marriage and home life with a very public career fits right into the timeline of Tyler's career journey that the Clancy album is nicely narrating to us. Track 8, Lavish. And then we hit Blurry Face. The era that blew everything up for these guys and completely changed their tax bracket, right? While the boys being on a red carpet is a rare sighting, most of the red carpet and awards show like hoopla went down during this Blurry Face era when Stressed Out became a massive hit, even winning a Grammy with the infamous pants dropping acceptance speech. So everything about this song, Lavish, is dripping with the description of what it would be like to get thrust into a lavish, bougie, A-list like lifestyle when you're not quite ready for it, right? We have the lines about like sipping a Capri Sun like it's Dom Perignon, right? Like it's like this isn't a world that he feels like he belongs in, but is being thrust into with this sudden success and this sudden massive fame. So something like that might be a little overwhelming and, difficult to navigate. Oh, look! A song about struggling to navigate your thoughts and feelings. Traffic 9, navigating. Okay, so again, there's clearly lyrics here that tie directly to what was going on in his life at the time he actually wrote it, like the bridge referencing the passing of his grandmother. But the basic theme of this song is about trying to navigate through all of these overwhelming changes. So timeline-wise, this would likely cover the time frame between Blurryface and Trench era, with Tyler feeling the pressure to deliver something amazing after the massive success of Blurryface. I also don't think it's a coincidence that the music video for Navigating does call back to the music video for My Blood, which is a track off of Trench. And I mean, let's not ignore the obvious here. Trench is a fictional physical place that Tyler created in order to navigate his inner world. Track 10, Snapback. And then the pandemic happened. The world shut down, no concerts, no tours, everything locked down. It was obvious that Tyler really struggled with the isolation and being away from his fans, his people, his trees. For example, during this Scaled and Icy era, the boys put on an incredible live stream, this live stream experience that included a very memorable performance of Tyler on his ukulele performing Heathens and Trees. And if you pay attention to Tyler's expression when he finishes this song, it's clear that this was an emotional moment for him. It was likely an emotional reaction to having to play the song Trees without an audience, without his people, his trees surrounding him, singing along with him. And that had to have hit him really hard that he's performing this song that is meant for community and connection in this sort of isolated studio. Now, Snapback is basically about feeling on the edge of a breakdown, feeling like all the progress you've made is about to come crashing down with a relapse. We have this line running from a thing that I kicked in 17, a callback to the year-long hiatus at the end of Blurryface era, as well as a reference to the Heavy Dirty Soul music video that was released in 2017 when he says, "I commandeered a hot ride, drove it till the engine died." When we look at the music video for Snapback, we've got a very long-haired Tyler alone in an empty garage, getting his hair cut, with the garage eventually opening and him seeing car lights. So I'm sure y'all remember Scaled and Icy was the era we got Space Buns Tyler, in which his hair had grown out because the lockdowns, right? Lockdowns, practically no one was getting haircuts at the time, okay? Everyone was growing beards and long hair during that time. So all in all, this song points us to the Scaled and Icy era of Tyler's career timeline. Even the music video with him having long hair, right? Pointing to this isolated time with him struggling during the pandemic and needing to snap back from that possible relapse in his mental health. Track 11, Oldie Station. And now we're leaving Scaled and Icy and we're entering into the current Clancy era. Tyler said that this track was written for the fans to let us know how he was doing. And this song is basically a, "Hey guys, I've struggled a lot, but I kept pushing through, and while life is never easy, I have a beautiful life that I love, so it's worth it to stay alive." It's basically the message of this song. It's a beautiful song, personally one of my favorites. But here he's caught us up to where he is now, okay, with a beautiful wife and 3 children that he loves. Track 12, At the Risk of Feeling Dumb. Now, I don't think it's a coincidence that this track comes right after Oldie Station, almost as if Tyler wanted to assure us that he was okay before letting us know, hey, some of your friends may not be okay though, so make sure you're checking in on them. There's also a chord progression in this song that has a similar sounding progression in Heavy Dirty Soul, which I find interesting. In Heavy Dirty Soul, we have someone begging to be saved, and in At the Risk of Feeling Dumb, we have Tyler imploring people to check on their friends because it could save them. So the connection with that and that sort of similar kind of chord progression sound is interesting with those two tracks. Another thing I find interesting about the placement of this track is not just that it comes after Oldie Station, but that it comes right before Paladin Strait. Tyler has spent his career really trying to keep people alive and prevent suicide. And so having this track almost like shares the responsibility a bit. It's not all on him to try and save everyone. He's inviting all of us, all of you, to take on that responsibility as well, to look out for one another and to be there for one another, to keep each other alive. Right as we then enter the final track of the album, which is him taking on a very serious responsibility while also admitting something incredibly vulnerable. Track 13, Paladin Strait. Tyler can't be alone, folks. Tyler can't be alone. The opening lines of this song are, I can't be alone. Guess I never told you so. Making my way towards you. So here again, I feel like we've left Scaled and Icy era. We've left that isolation, and he's making his way back to us, back to the audience, back to his community, his people. Here is where I feel he reveals a cycle that not many people have noticed or are talking about. Because when we look at the Dima storyline, the most obvious themes point to cycles of addiction or mental health struggles and cycles in those mental health struggles. There's even quite a lot of religious and spiritual symbolism and imagery pointing to cycles of sin and repentance. But a cycle that gets missed is Tyler's push and pull between his personal and family life and his creative career and public life. The struggle between normality and a calling. Even tracing all the way back to Ode to Sleep, Tyler has always seemed to struggle with wanting a regular, normal life and feeling like he's been called to something greater. He's gone through this entire career living this cycle, going to college the way any normal person would, but then being called to music instead, falling in love and getting married, like plenty of normal people do, while trying to balance this calling for helping people stay alive through his music, finding massive success, but getting overwhelmed and taking a break for some privacy and some recuperation, coming out of hiatus because he couldn't be away from the fans too long, and then getting forced to be away from the fans too long when the lockdowns happen, and then having children, starting a family, but being pulled to tour and to get back out there amongst the fans. We saw in the More Than We Ever Imagined movie, Tyler talking about having to kind of tell himself and convince himself that this life that he has that isn't normal, that it is normal for him. Right? His coping mechanism for not having a normal life was to try and make peace with this being his normal. So there's just this back and forth, right? Wanting privacy and normalcy, but needing the connection and community of the fan base. The private life versus public calling. Over and over again with each album and each break in between. Now, let's take a moment to actually look at what a paladin is, right? This is called Paladin Strait. Historically and traditionally, paladins are typically the holy warrior, right? This holy warrior or knight who has some kind of divine quest that they've sworn an oath to fulfill. These are dedicated and loyal warriors for the cause, and in some cases, and in certain lore, they're even portrayed as protectors and healers, even. So let's look at what he's actually saying here in this song within the context of the tracks that just came before it. So he gave us a rundown of his entire career, okay? This push and pull between private and public life. Then he reassured us that he's doing okay, then invited us to take on some of the mantle of looking out for one another, so it's not all on him. And then he tells us in this song, I would swim the Paladin Strait without any flotation, just a glimpse of visual aid of you on the other shoreline, waiting, expectations that I'm gonna make it. He's admitting to us that he needs us just as much as we need him. As much as the fan base has all looked to him as their paladin, as the one that has saved their lives, we've saved his as well. And there's a commitment here from him to be willing to continue that endless, exhaustive cycle and struggle so long as he sees that we're on the shore waiting for him. As much as he would probably like to have that kind of insignificant normal life, he's willing to take on that mantle and that calling, that divine quest, knowing that we all believe in him. Now, we have to ask ourselves, why? Why would Tyler give us a rundown of his career? Why would he give us this commitment in Paladin Strait? Why the lines, "Put my money where my mouth is"? Why in the Bandito letters during the Clancy tour? Why was the message, "If we become them, we must do better," hidden in code? Y'all, I think I know why. I think I know why. Outside of the mental health symbolism, outside of the addiction symbolism, outside of the religious symbolism, okay, we know all of these themes exist with the Dima storyline. We know that. But outside of that, outside of those obvious themes, there is a message and story being communicated here directly tied to his career that I think we're all missing. And I think it all points to 2011. So bear with me on this. Bear with me on this. You'll want to see my next episode of Beyond the Reaction. It's called The 2011 Theory, and it's going to explain why the Clancy album was set up this way and why Breach came so soon behind it and where I think the band might be going next. So stay tuned. We're going to have some fun.